Justice Sotomayor?
You answered Justice Gorsuch, I think correctly, that if Article 3 precludes universal injunctions, then even class actions are illegal. That's what you're arguing, isn't it?
I disagree with that profoundly.
How could it, if Article 3 and only prohibits injunctions that affect non-members or non-plaintiffs, how could Congress give a remedy like a class action?
In an article or in a Rule 23 class, every member, represented member of the class, has standing by hypothesis. So every single one of them has an Article 3 injury, and Rule 23 again.
So that would be the only method.
It would be very similar to the Bill of Peace, where all those parties, either their president or representative capacity, are bound.
We can act quickly. If we are worried about those thousands of children who are going to be born without citizenship papers that could render them stateless in some places because some of their parents' homes don't recognize children of their nationals unless those children are born in their countries. They're not going to be receiving federal benefits because that's the claim of the plaintiffs here, that of the state plaintiffs, that they're not going to be able to provide services to those children. Shouldn't we grant cert before judgment on that issue? If we're afraid that this is, or even have a thought that this is unlawful executive action, that it is Congress who decides citizenship, not the executive, if we believe, some of us were to believe that, why should we permit those countless others to be subject to what we think is an unlawful executive action? As unlawful as an executive taking the guns away from every citizen.
Cert before judgment would be another tool, but through which this court could act expeditiously.
This is the kind of case where the equities would call for that. And why wouldn't it? It's a pure legal question. What does the Constitution mean with respect to citizenship? There are no individual facts that would alter our conclusion. If we can't do it by a universal injunction, because you say Article 3 doesn't permit that, Article 3 wouldn't permit us to give a universal injunction, even if we rule. Why don't we grant cert before judgment, so that all of these parents would have a firm Supreme Court decision that they can take where? Because you're saying nobody can grant a universal injunction.
No party has asked for that in this case, and I think one reason is that would deny the court of the benefit of percolation in multiple lower courts of a novel and sensitive and important constitutional question.
We have novel courts who've percolated this issue and said, you're violating precedent. Not only precedent, but the plain meaning of the 14th of the Constitution.
Respectfully, I think what we have are lower courts making snap judgments on the merits that ignore the fundamental principle of the 14th Amendment, that it was about giving citizenship to the children of slaves, not to the children of illegal immigrants who really were not even a very discreet class at that time. And that's the sort of argument that deserves percolation.
There were some people in Congress who argued against the 13th Amendment just because of that. Some people who argued against passing the amendment just because of that, because it would give citizenship to gypsies.
I think the relevant history of the 14th Amendment is the statements of Senator Trumbull, who emphasized that domicile was the key criterion. He said that in a letter to Andrew Jackson, and we've cited in our Ninth Circuit briefing a host of decisions that back that up.
And it got rejected repeatedly. We can go into the history of citizenship, but I still go back to my question. You claim that there is absolutely no constitutional way to stop, put this aside, to stop a president from an unconstitutional act, a clearly, indisputably unconstitutional act, taking every gun from every citizen. We couldn't stop that.
I disagree with that for the reasons I've said, including the equitable tools.
No, because you said to us we'd have to wait until there was a final judgment. You're not sure you would respect the judgment of every circuit, you're not sure that you would respect even a final judgment of the Supreme Court because it only binds the parties before it. And if there's no class action, that only binds the parties before the court.
I don't think there's a, so to speak, really unconstitutional exception to the strictures of Article 3 or the scope of equitable authority, and the court should not recognize one, because what we see, not just in this case, but in the 39 others, is that the district courts who are issuing these injunctions all passionately disagree with the thing that's being challenged in that. So that principle that, well, this we think is really unconstitutional, therefore we should ignore the general principles of Article 3 is not a principle the court ought to adopt.
Justice